Hello and welcome to Mrs. Messiah's very first video blog of Algebra 2 Direct. So today we are going to start with a warm-up for tomorrow. Tomorrow is Tuesday, so you guys can get a head start on this if you so choose. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the square root of 80 here, and 80 breaks up into 8 times 10, so I can write that, and 8 breaks up into 4 and 2. 8 is done. 10 breaks up into 2 times 5. 10 is done. Now 4 breaks up even smaller into 2 times 2, but 2's are prime, so they cannot be broken up any further. Prime meaning that it doesn't have factors other than 2 in itself, or 1 in itself. So 2 times 1. So what we're going to do here is we are going to rewrite what we've got under the square root. Before we had 80, and now I could say 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 is the same thing as the square root of 80, because 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 more is 8, times 2 more is 16, times 5 is 80. So now I have to look to see if there's any pairs. I have a pair of 2's here, and if I have a pair, that pair is no longer under the square root. It's going to hop outside, and now there's a 2 outside of the square root. But I still have another pair of 2's, so I'm going to take that pair also and write it outside the square root. When I do that, I have to multiply my 2 numbers together, so I have a total of 4, and I have 5 left over under the square root. There's my final answer. Moving on, we've got another example here where we have to rationalize the denominator. What that means is we can't have a square root in the bottom of a fraction. It would just be an irrational number, and we're trying to rationalize it, meaning get rid of the square root on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by that same square root of 3, and if I multiply on the bottom, I have to multiply on the top, because what you do to one side you have to do to the other. So if I do it to the bottom, I've got to do it to the top. Now when I do this, I'm left with 6 root 3, because I multiply across here. And then if on the bottom I have the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, that's also the same thing as the square root of 9. But when I have 2 numbers that are the same, they can cancel each other out and hop outside the square root. Because if you have the square root of 9, which is 3 times 3, the square root of 9 simplifies just to 3. So now I have 6 root 3 on the top and a 3 on the bottom, but I can do it a little bit more here. What I can do is I can simplify. So I'm going to cross out my 6, and that's the same as 2 times 3. And since I multiplied by 3 here, I know 3 also multiplies by 3, and that's 1. So I look for 2 numbers that are the same, 3 and 3, they cancel out, and I'm left with 2 root 3 over 1. Whenever you have something divided by 1, you can also cross out the bottom, and you're left with what's left on the top. That's all for today for our warm-up. Stay tuned, and I will present the lesson shortly. Thanks!